The board was hanging on a very thin wire, so after 2 hours, blood oozed out on the wire and dripped down. He was over 50, or close to 60.
I whipped them with a leather belt. There were men and women. Most were women. We beat them hard. I had a kind of animal instinct. I used to enjoy beating people.
Ding dong, I hope everyone is doing great, and I'm recording this video after a lot of days, and just like always, I have reasons even this time. Hear me out. The first reason is this, that as I told you in the last video, that I want to become financially independent, because right now I'm dependent on my parents, and for God's sake, trust me, like they are still taking care of me like this big animal. So I came up with this idea. I think I mentioned it in the last video that I'm gonna develop a software which is going to help digitalize a lot of local business in Pakistan. So I was designing the UI, and I finally sent the UI some pictures to my friends, and one of my very close friend, Hassan Raza, is working on it. So this was the first reason where I was busy, because I need to prioritize it. At the same time, since my content is going to be revolving around politics and some very controversial topics, so I want to take as much time as it needs before making a video, because I think that there are 1,000 ways your one video, your one message could be misinterpreted. So I want to be really careful. So that is why I was taking a lot of time. Okay, so putting all this aside, let's talk about the purpose of today's video, why I chose to make this piece of video, and why I chose this particular topic out of many other topics. And the reason is kind of personal. There is something that is so disturbing, yet I find it fascinating, is that if we go back into the history and we try to understand that what thing killed most of the humans, we will find out that it was the humans that killed most of the humans. Even though we are conscious, even though we are able to make good decisions, if we look back into the history, we ended up killing so many people. Even if we just read 100 years of history, we will find that we killed so many humans. And not just 100 years, just go back 5 years ago, and we all know what happened in Miramar. So I was studying about a revolution where some young people ended up killing more than 1 million people. And the things that they were doing was really similar to what is happening today. It is not happening to the same level, but the things are directed in the same direction. You can see the pattern, and I'm really optimistic towards future. I think I shouldn't be, but I think that we have this very beautiful thing, this internet, where all the information, where all the history is just a click away, and we can read it, we can study it. And so when we study it, we can see the patterns, and when we will see the patterns, okay, so these humans did the same thing, so maybe we are doing the same things. And when we will realize that, we will become careful, and we will end up making better decisions. So while I was reading all this, I'm okay, I think that there is a need of making such a video and such a comparison. So this is the reason why I am making this video. So if you're interested in knowing this or watching this video, then my name is Zishan Ali, and you are on Diary of a Brown Person. Before we get to the main contents of the video, I want you guys to do something for me, and that thing is, please be critical of every word that I say. Please question everything that I say. That understand that I am not an expert. I can be wrong. There must be some things that I am missing. There must be some variables that I forgot to put into consideration. So there is a high probability that what I'm saying, it could be wrong. So please question whatever I'm saying. And the second thing that I want you guys to know is that I'm not on the side of left, I'm not on the side of right, I'm not a communist, socialist, or capitalist. This video is not about this. This video is not about taking on one side and saying that the other side is wrong. The purpose of this video is that we go back to the history, and we see that how a lot of young people were brainwashed, and they ended up killing a lot of people. This is the purpose of making this video. So just keep that thing in mind, and watch the video with this mentality, with that focus, not with the focus that if I am left, if I'm right, whatever he's saying is wrong. No, I'm not talking about being left or right. So now let's talk about today's video. Okay, so in today's video, we are actually talking about cultural revolution of China and the Red Guards. Now, what was it about? For now, you just need to know that through cultural revolution, a lot of young people ended up killing more than 1.5 million people. They destroyed a lot of properties. There was a lot of deaths, punishment, public humiliation, torture, rape, and a lot of like bad things. So we are going to talk about why it happened, who did this, why he did that, and how he was able to brainwash people, and what was the psychology of these students, like what they were thinking and why they did all this, like why they couldn't realize what they were doing wrong and what they did. Now, at the same time, I will make some comparisons with the West. Now, I know that in the West, the situation is not the same. It is not even close, but it is directed towards the same direction for different reasons, obviously. But you can see a lot of similarities. When you will watch the whole video, then you will realize. But before, let me clarify one thing also, is that I'm not against the young people doing protest. I'm not against anything. I think it's a good thing. But we need to learn from history, and that is the purpose why I'm making this video. So, in order to understand the Cultural Revolution, first we need to know about the Mao Zedong, who he was. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about his history. Okay, so who was Mao Zedong? Well, in short, Mao Zedong was the chairman of Communist Party of China, but other than that, he was an extraordinary student. He could have a very normal or wealthy life because his family was a little bit of wealthy family like at the time in China. But he's like, no, I'm not gonna marry. He actually refused to marry a girl at the age of 14 or 15. If I will get a chance, I'm like, yeah, sure, bring it on. But he refused. He's like, no, I don't want to live a wealthy life. I don't want to have this wife. I want to go and study, because he was fond of like books, and he used to read a lot of books even as a child. So he went to a university. He started like studying there, and he studied a lot of Karl Marx and communism. And at the same time, he was an extraordinary student. He came now like number 3 when he graduated, which means that he was a third best student in his graduation class. While he stayed in university, he also formed a student association where students were started protesting against the university laws if something was not right according to them. And at the same time, he also like made some kind of an army where a lot of like-minded people joined him. I think those were 18 people. And then after like passing through the university graduation, he became a librarian where he started studying a lot more books. And at the same time, Communist Party of China came into existence. And the Communist Party of China was like a fine party, but the ruling party of China at the time was KMT. Now KMT hated communists, and they started killing a lot of people who believed in communism. And since Mao Zedong was inspired by Karl Marx and he was a communist, so he became a part of Communist Party of China. And there was like one thing that happened which is really important in his life, which made him the person he was, or made him a big person, and that thing called the Long March. Now the Long March was basically, I think, 800 miles of going through a treacherous territory. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce it, but you know what I mean. What happened is that like a lot of like KMT people surrounded him, and Mao Zedong was like, okay, if we don't want to be killed, we need to make this long march. Now 90% of the people died, but 10% people were alive, and one of them were Mao Zedong. It made a kind of an image of Mao Zedong, a personality, and people were like, wow, he made it. And after that, he started like, he became, I think at that time, he became a big leader in the Communist Party of China, and he started recruiting a lot of people. At the same time, Japan attacked China. Now the KMT was losing the battle against the Japan, and the Japan could have got the land of China and kill a lot of Chinese people. So the KMT aligned, like became the ally of like a Communist Party of China, and both of them fought against Japanese and won the war. And then after that, the civil war started again. But this time, the Communist Party of China was extremely strong, so they were able to defeat KMT. And then Mao Zedong became the president, you can say, of China. When he became the leader of China, he did a lot of good things. He gave equal rights, not equal, I don't know, but a lot of rights to women. He increased the like quality of education as well as the healthcare. He took lands from the warlords and gave it back to the people. So he did a lot of good things, and a lot of good things happened, and people were happy. But there was something wrong, and that something was that he did not allow any kind of criticism. He hated the criticism, and he like killed people, people, tortured people, and put people in labor camps just for criticizing him. At the same time, after a while, he's like, okay, we need to do something in China in order to make it a good state, or so in order to improve the living standards of the Chinese people. He wanted to industrialize China, and for that he came up with a plan which was called the Great Leap Forward. Now we're not going to get into the details, but just because the criticism was not allowed, those people made a lot of bad mistakes, and the Great Leap Forward was a disaster. It resulted in the worst famine, in one of the worst famine in the history of mankind. 45 million people died. The estimations could be like big, but I looked on a lot of different sources, and like the minimum we can go is 30 million people, and the highest we can go is 45 million people. And I read like some of the documents and watched some documentaries, and I came to know that the famine was so bad that people actually started eating each other. There was cannibalism, and children were like thrown out of the mountains if they were looking for food. Like a lot of bad things happen, and 45 million people die. Now because of this, because the Great Leap Forward was a failure, a lot of people lost their trust in Mao Zedong, and he needed to step down from his party. Now Mao Zedong realized that like a lot of people don't believe in communism in the same way, because it resulted in terrible things. So he needed to step down as a chairman, but he kept on working for the party. He was still a very important official, but somehow he came onto the power again, and he realized that there's a lot of opposition and a lot of people are against him. What could be done? And in order to seize power, in order to get rid of all the opposition and criticism, he did Cultural Revolution. So let's talk about the Cultural Revolution. Alright, now we know what happened prior to the Cultural Revolution, so now it will make much more sense why the Cultural Revolution took place and why it was easy for people to be brainwashed. So the Cultural Revolution was two different things for Mao Zedong. For Mao Zedong it was a different thing, and for the people it was a different thing. For Mao Zedong it was an opportunity to put the blame on other people and on the opposition, and use the young people to get rid of opposition and criticism, so he can stay in power, so he can seize the power. While for the young people, Mao Zedong, even at that time, was, since there was no like internet and there was not a lot of intellectuals and all that, so people were be like, yeah, Mao Zedong was a person who because of which China is not a part of Japan. If it would have been the part of Japan, if Japan would have been won, then we would have been, you know what I mean by that. And he did the long march, and a lot of people believes in him, and when he came into the power, he gave us a lot of rights. He gave us women some rights, he gave like us education, he improved our health care, so he must be a great person. Maybe it was opposition. So what Mao Zedong did at the time is that he started making a lot of appearances in the Tiananmen Square of China, and a lot of young people gathered there, and he told to the young people that we're gonna have a Cultural Revolution, and you need to carry it out till the end.
He said something, but we couldn't hear clearly. Later we learned that he said we should carry on the Cultural Revolution to the end.
Okay, so the Cultural Revolution, like so to speak, was a way to get rid of like power. But like for students, what was given to them is by the Mao Zedong and the Communist Party of China is that, look, we failed because there are a lot of capitalists in our country, and we need to like get rid of like bourgeoisies. I know it's a French word. I'm sorry if I fucked it up, but bourgeoisies. What is a bourgeoisies? Well, bourgeoisies are the people who are a little bit more wealthy, who have a little bit more social status. These people are called bourgeois. So the young people were given the task that go and re-educate them, because they are against the revolution. And how could they be against the revolution? You are a young person, you are the power of this country. Go and re-educate those people, because those... Second task that was given to the young people was go and destroy all culture, ideology, tradition, and customs. So now there is one thing I want you to understand about young people. It's a bit of a psychological thing. We love to have a purpose, but we want to have an easy purpose as any young people. You might be like, how can you say that? Well, I will just give you this one example. A lot of young people, including me, we love playing games. Why we play games? Games like Dark Souls. Sekiro. Hard games, because it's easy to play those games. There's a challenge involved, but it's an easy challenge. A game gives us a purpose, that there's a story you need to finish. So we like the purpose, but we don't like big challenges in our real life. So if we just look at Alibaba, right, the person who made Alibaba, or Tesla, how many hours they worked. Everyone wants to be that person, but they don't want to put the effort. So we find those like easy things to do, and just like that, the Mao Zedong give them the same easy thing, a big thing which is very easy to do. And that thing is, it's not hard to beat some people up, no, isn't it? If you are with like 500 people or even 50 people, and there are 4 people against you, it's easy to fight with those people, and it's easy to destroy the buildings and their culture and traditions than to build those things. So these young people were given the easy tasks to do, so they liked it. That's the first thing you need to understand. And the second thing you need to understand is that as a young people, we hate schools. As a young people, we hate the law. As a young people, we hate all traditions, cultures, and our parents, everything that keeps us in control, that keeps us civilized. We hate it, right? So what the Mao Zedong did is that he's like, first of all, the schools closed down.
In September 1966, schools did not open for the academic year.
No one needs to go to the school. The second thing is that the lie is not there. According to Mao Zedong, let them do whatever they are doing. They will learn from their mistakes. So the police and army was like, don't get involved.
First year of the Cultural Revolution, the army was told, hands off. The police were told, hands off. And Mao said, let the young champions make their own mistakes, learn from their own mistakes, and correct themselves. We can't stand behind them and point and criticize. So it was a great free-for-all.
The third thing is that he bore the expenses. So he asked the young people go and travel and gain a revolutionary kind of experience. So go and travel across China. Young people like traveling. So now they also don't need to stay with their parents.
With Mao's approval, the Red Guards traveled for free around the country to gain revolutionary experience.
It was the first chance we had to break away from our parents, to do whatever we wanted.
Now, after that, we people hate our culture, right? To a lot of extent, we can understand it. We hate the culture, we hate the traditions, customs, and ideologies. We hate the old thinking and all that because we think it's wrong. A lot of times, these things keeps us in control. By the way, religion was also, targeted. And the religion was not involved in the 4 Alls, but it was targeted specifically. And we also hate, or we don't like religion as a young people. And I think we all can relate to it to a certain extent because it keeps us in control. So Mao Zedong, first, he did all those things. And on top of that, the other things, some things that gives you some values, they were seen as a threat. They were seen as bad things. Like in our culture, I don't think that in our culture, there are like a lot of bad things. Yes, there are some bad things. But a lot of time, if you look around, like all traditions, culture, customs keeps us in control. And as a young people, since just because it restricts it, we hate it. So the young people were like, go and destroy all those things as well. And on top of that, the people were taught things like, without destruction, you can't have a construction.
That without destruction, there's no construction. First destroy, and on the basis of the destruction will arise something.
And a revolution is supposed to be hard.
Chairman Mao had said, a revolution is an insurrection, an act of violence by which one class overthrows another. It's not a dinner party. We had to be rough and harsh and wild.
Don't sit with them. And if you feel like sitting with them and you feel like not re-educating them and not being hard on them, then maybe you're too simplistic.
I didn't know most of the people who were struggled against. When we heard different views, we wondered, if you sympathized with the party official, did it mean you were too simplistic? Did it mean you lacked political consciousness and couldn't see his evil capitalist roader nature? Whenever a question came up, our first reaction was not to believe the official might be innocent, but that we were too naive and too inexperienced.
When things like that said to the people, you can't expect them, and there's no law, no parents, no culture, schools are closed down. What can you expect? And what happened afterwards was terrible. And now, while I will be showing you what happened afterwards, I will be making some similarities between the West and the Cultural Revolution and the Red Guard. So let's move to the next portion. So what happened afterwards is that they went out, a lot of like young people, they gathered around, they started destroying old shrines, like religious stuff, and they started changing it with their own things, with their own ideologies and all that.
Churches were closed, clergy unfrocked, religious symbols smashed.
Temples and shrines were ransacked. Despite official designation as cultural treasures,
the statue of the Virgin Mary was replaced by a portrait of Mao. One form of worship gave way to another.
There was to be a new revolution, a cultural revolution, a revolution in people's thinking.
All ideas contrary to Mao's thinking and the objects that represented them had to be destroyed.
many irreplaceable objects were destroyed.
Instance, fall from grace.
Also statues of David and the like, the kind used in drawing classes. The rebels were full of themselves. They struck poses as they smashed everything.
And the people sinned a great sin.
They started looting and stealing from the people.
We knew our home would be a target sooner or later. We fit the category. My parents had both been capitalists. Finally, one day, the Red Guards came charging in and turned our house upside down.
This is a business that my parents started 40 years ago, small, out of their garage. You didn't do anything to anybody. Why did we deserve it?
Former capitalists who had long since given up their assets. The local police asked the Minister of Public Security if the Red Guards should be stopped. No, that would be unwise.
The people and the businesses that did not support them, they started destroying them or became against them.
There was a famous hair salon. It displayed photographs of all kinds of hairdos. When the Cultural Revolution came, they were seen as examples of bourgeois decadence. A group of Red Guards took over the place.
We own this building, that building, that building, this building, which are all destroyed.
And after that, they went for people and they targeted any protester who did not agreed with them. They used to gather around and they used to make a lot of rhythmic chants.
I can remember as though it were yesterday watching a group of strongly built students, including some of my own classmates, boys who practiced.
And they used to say it is that it is a struggle session. It is for them to re-educate. A lot of landowners were targeted. Peasants were targeted.
Those rounded up were made to write self-denunciations. They wore names on their backs. Capitalist, landlord.
Wake up! Wake up, motherfucker, wake up! Wake up! Wake up, motherfucker, wake up!
Mao argued that the peasant violence was an inevitable response to landlord oppression. To redress past wrongs, it was necessary to go to extremes.
If your name's Puffer or John, whichever one it is, give up your house, give black people back their home. You're sitting there comfortably, comfortable as fuck, as if you didn't have to gentrify this neighborhood.
And they were forced to kneel down.
They ordered us to get down on our knees.
So if they see that a white person is getting on their knees, that shows solidarity for the situation. The situation. And could you just please apologize for, for your white privilege? Just apologize?
Here it is, right here. There you go. This is the white man. Get these white women.
They forced my parents to kneel.
No.
And after that, all of this turned into violence. They started killing people.
Lies implicit distinction between smashing bourgeois ideas and smashing bourgeois individuals was quickly forgotten.
A person wearing a Patriot Prayer hat was shot and killed in Portland last night.
Even though the editorial neither mentioned the report nor praised violence, it was clear that the extreme actions of the Red Guards were not to be criticized.
Politicians were targeted and a lot of intellectuals were targeted as well. And a lot of bad things happened. Okay, so the Cultural Revolution resulted in the death of 1.5 million people. A lot of businesses were destroyed, a lot of families were teared apart, and a lot of people went through humiliation. Now the question is that why a lot of families were affected by the Cultural Revolution. It was because the young people, the Red Guards, were told that anyone who is against a Mao Zedong revolution or anything, or is a capitalist, you should re-educate them. And you saw the way they told them or inspired them to re-educate is by humiliation and a lot of bad things. So it actually affected a lot of families, because in a lot of families the kids or the young people believed in Mao Zedong and communism, but their parents saw what happened as a result of Mao Zedong and communism in the Great Leap Forward, when more than 75 million people died. So but the young people didn't understood, so they just like became bad with their own parents or with their own family. So it also destroyed a lot of families. So this was a result of the Cultural Revolution. Now, there are so many things that we can learn from the Cultural Revolution, and that is what we are going to talk about. Before you judge me, because most of the videos of the West that I put was coming from the Black Lives Matter protest, I did that on purpose. And why I did that on purpose is to show you that even the good protests can turn out bad. Just like the people in the Cultural Revolution, they had good intentions, but it resulted in a lot of bad things. Just like that, these good protests can also like result in bad things. It's not that I am against Black Lives Matter. Actually, I support Black Lives Matter because I know in the history what happened, the slavery and then the redlining, the racial profiling. But there is one thing that we should all understand, that just like the fault of the black people was just that they were black and we did injustice with them in the past. Just like that, we should not repeat the same thing with white people today, because that's what I see that is happening. That like just because they are white or just because their parents were like slave owners or anything, they are being judged and they are being treated badly, or any person who have a different opinion. And then you can see that how from like peaceful protest it happened, rioting and all that. The problem is that yes, so far nothing like that Cultural Revolution happened, but you can notice that every time we are pushed one step ahead. And why it happens is because a lot of politicians, they spread hatred and they show you, just like Mao Zedong, that you know, in order to do all those good things you need to become violent.
Don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country, and maybe there will be.
People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator.
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
Enemies of the state.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
Go ahead, take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
Punch some people in the face!
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
But now we saw what happened in the history when we became violent. So we know that this is not the right way to fix those problems. The right way to fix those problems is to sit down with those people and discuss with the people of the opposite opinion. And okay, if you don't agree with us, what is it that we should do then? Why you don't agree with us? But that's what we are not doing. We are just constantly fighting with each other. And if we look at the charts, then especially in USA, the people are the most divided today. It is because we judge people so much, is that he is like this because he don't care about black people or anything else. It's not like that. It's just a matter of what you consume, what company you had. For example, if I don't support Black Lives Matter, just for the sake of an argument, it is most probably because I have consumed the kind of content that makes me like that. It is because my friends have told me, or my family told me, or the group around me told me. So now you should educate me, and the way to educate is not what the Cultural Revolution did or not what the people are doing today. It is a way to sit down with them and discuss with them. So this is what we all need. So the other lessons that we can learn from this Cultural Revolution is that just because someone has been good leader in the past, it does not mean that they can also do the good things, which means that we should always question our politicians. Even if they are saying the best things in the world, we should still question them. The second thing is that we should not put out radical policies like what happened with the Great Leap Forward. 75 million people died, right? Just like that, I see that because of climate change and all that, a lot of policies and a lot of projects are like pushed forward. We should do this or we should do that, but we should be very careful, because what happened in the Great Leap Forward, 75 million people died. So if we are not careful enough, this can happen again. So we should be extremely careful. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that no matter what ideology, no matter what philosophy you are believing or anything like that, you should always be open to criticism. Because whatever happened in Mao Zedong and whatever happened with those young people is that they did not let criticism affect them. They became so sure about their position that whatever they are doing is good, but later on they realized that a lot of things that they did was terrible. So these are the lessons we should learn, is that learn to be okay with criticism. Always criticize, do not put radical policies, and do not blindly trust in your politicians. So I really hope that this video became actually very long, and I didn't want it to become so long, but I hope you learned something from this video, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care of yourself, and Allah Hafiz.